Hi, Phil Aston here from nowspinning.co.uk. On this video, I'm going to be talking about my top 10 Ozzy Osbourne tracks. And this video has been inspired by the documentary that's on the TV over here in the UK at the moment called The 9 Lives of Ozzy Osbourne. And I found it really moving. There was quite a few times when my eyes were kind of like, starting to, almost, feel tears forming, really. It made me realise just how long Ozzy Osbourne, his voice and the music has been part of my life. I may not have always bought Ozzy albums when they came out, first of all, and there has been times during the last few decades when I've kind of thought, nah, that's not for me. But I've got everything by him now. And but he's been part of my life since I was a school kid in the early 70s with the early Sabbath albums. So watching the documentary, which I highly recommend, because it's literally, so brutal and honest. It's called The 9 Lives of Ozzy Osbourne because he literally had 9 lives. And whatever you think of, Sharon, obviously she loves him to bits and he loves her. And, without each other, you can imagine that the story would have ended a long time ago. So what I've tried to do is pick my top 10 Ozzy tracks. Now, a couple of them are fluid, i.e., if you ask me this tomorrow, they may have changed. But most of them are in stone, that they would always be the tracks I would go to. So, in order of the first 10 doesn't mean, so what's number 1 isn't the best Ozzy track, it's just in my top 10. And what I've done is I put them in order of them emerging into the world. So the first Ozzy track, to me, is Black Sabbath, from Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath. That opening track with the tolling bell and the clap of thunder not only is the beginning of a genre of music called heavy metal, but it is still so unsettling to hear that track. And what it must have been like to hear that in 1970 compared to what else was going on around you, I cannot begin to imagine. But even now, that track is so powerful. Obviously, it's a lot to do with Tony Iommi's riff and Geezer Butler's lyrics, but the delivery by Ozzy Osbourne, his voice hadn't quite found the pitch he would be using later on. I mean, on tracks like Warning, where it sounds like he can't quite keep in tune, but his delivery on that track, Black Sabbath, is so menacing. And when he says, "Oh, please God help me," you believe that whatever's going on, this guy needs help. So that's number 1. Number 2, again, pretty obvious, I guess, from the album Paranoid, is the opening track, War Pigs. Still the best anti-war song ever written, as far as I'm concerned. Still sounds like it was recorded last week. There's nothing else like it. Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses. Ozzy sounds so authentic and real. No one else can do that. I know Dio had a go when he joined Sabbath in the early 80s, and I love that lineup of Sabbath, but singing Ozzy tracks, it just didn't really work that well. And this is Ozzy's track, War Pigs. So that's my second out of my top 10. Number 3 is from Volume 4, and I'll be doing a unboxing on the Super Deluxe Volume 4 very soon. And the track is Changes. And this one is because this shows Ozzy's voice, which by now had matured really well, just how emotive and emotional he could be in delivering words. It's a ballad, which he had a hit many, many years later with his daughter. But here, with the sparse piano arrangement and the mellotron by Geezer, the lyrics about him losing the love of his life I just think it's so moving. It always was moving to me when I was a kid. And now all these years later, every time I hear Changes by Black Sabbath with Ozzy singing, I stop whatever I'm doing. I think it is one of the best vocal performances he ever did. And it is also one of the best rock ballads. And I don't think anyone else could sing it. I think that there was a guy on YouTube who's had a go at it, and it's good. But I do think that this track, Changes by Black Sabbath from Volume 4, is just immaculate. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful song. So that's my next Ozzy moment. The next two come from the same album, and that is Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. And the tracks I've chosen from here are a National Acrobat. The riff and the vocal, it's mainly because of the way he sings the words. And it's an epic song which goes through so many different kind of dimensions, really. But there's that bit when it changes the riff and you get that really riff on its own with that little bit of reverb and echo on it, and Ozzy comes in and he puts a few ad-libs in. I just think it's to me, it's one of my top Black Sabbath songs anyway. But I just think the way Ozzy again delivers it, no one else could do it. No one else could do that. This is what you think about some bands and the way they come together and the members of those bands, whether it's, the bands like The Who or Zeppelin. The key component of every member was almost like, it's almost like an act of God in a way. It's like perfect timing that no one else could create that sound apart from those four kids, if you like. And I just think it's perfect. A National Acrobat from Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and Ozzy Osbourne, he's in such command of those lyrics and in such command of the song. He is, they were ploughing ahead with a new genre of music, and this, in some places, it's almost like prog, but it's so sophisticated, this album. This is my favourite Sabbath album of all time, by the way. And the next track I pick is Sabbra Cadabra from the same album on the same side, which is basically a love song and very different to what Ozzy kind of been singing lyrically up to this point. It's very much a kind of gooey love song. It's about really being the passion and really being with somebody and the excitement, etc. And again, the delivery and Ozzy's, especially towards the end, he goes into ad-lib, and I think Rick Wakeman's on this one. I just think it's fantastic. I could have picked other things, but to me, Sabbra Cadabra is again another one of my favourite Ozzy moments. So what's next? Well, I miss out Sabotage. I know there's so many I could pick, but I've picked 10. And it's from Technical Ecstasy, which is an album I've done a review on the Now Spinning website because I think it's highly underrated. And the track I've picked on here is also another ballad, and it's She's Gone. And again, it's got those beautiful strings on it. And again, because of the tone of his voice, I just believe him. You can feel the anguish and the kind of angst in his delivery. I remember I used to buy Sounds newspaper, and someone who wasn't a Black Sabbath fan wrote into the letters page saying they'd heard this track because it was a B-side of a single, and they were saying how beautiful it was and what else would be like that Black Sabbath had done, because they weren't sure. Well, of course, it's not representative of Black Sabbath, but it also shows the kind of diversity back then that rock bands would not necessarily just do 10 tracks all the same. A bit like Priest, who now they're locked into just doing metal, whereas if you look at Sin After Sin, it was a very varied album, really. And this is a very varied album. There are tracks like Gypsy, which are a bit like Queen in some places, and of course Dirty Women, etc. But She's Gone is just such a beautiful track. And just like in Changes, his phrasing and his delivery and how he must have been, I know they're all supposed to be on drugs at this point, but his delivery, I think, is just spot on. I think it could have been a hit on its own, really. It wouldn't have been seen as Black Sabbath, but it's a beautiful, beautiful song. So next is going to be, we leave Sabbath and we go to the first Ozzy solo album, Blizzard of Ozz. And I could have picked the obvious track here, which would be Crazy Train, but I didn't. The track that I play the most off this is I Don't Know. To me, that's the best riff. And I think, again, it's a statement of intent, isn't it? He's on his own. He's starting up again. He's kind of like chips on both shoulder. It also has that middle section where he sings with wonderful melody. You could see Ozzy could actually cope with any type of music, really. But I Don't Know from Blizzard of Ozz is the next one that's in my top 10. And again, this is an unmovable object. It's one of my favourites. Next is Diary of a Madman, not that track. It's actually Flying High Again. And again, the chorus is very popish in a way. Great heavy metal riff from Randy Rhoads, but the melody is really strong, and Ozzy's confidence in his voice is back, and they really were flying high at this point, and it's such a shame that Randy Rhoads is no longer with us. But this album, I play this more than the first one, but I just love that track, Flying High Again. And then there's a gap in my list, because obviously we're now down to only 2 left. We've done 8. So my 9th in the top 10 is from No More Tears, and it is the track No More Tears. This was an absolute revelation to me, because he'd obviously been on the exercise bike, he'd been in rehab, and he comes out with this, with Zakk Wylde's guitar riff. And I bet you can all remember seeing the video for the first time. He looks so menacing as he kind of moves slowly across that stage. But my God, is it a fantastic track. It's really Ozzy. In the background, Sabbath were kind of stumbling around in the background and the engines were failing left, right and centre. But for Ozzy, he was back. 90s, grunge was around, but didn't affect Ozzy at all. And, this is, if I have to pick my favourite Ozzy solo album, it will be this one. But for this video, this is number 9 on my best tracks. And again, you've got that, just before I move on, that middle section in the track, you've got all those kind of violins and things. It really is a fantastic, fantastic song. So what is going to be number 10 in my top 10 Ozzy tracks? It's actually going to be from his most recent album, and the track is Ordinary Man. And this is the one now, even as I start to talk about it, it makes me kind of well up a bit, because I think you have to see it with the video. When you see him like sitting like this with his head in his hands as he sees things on the screen from his life where he feels bad about, whether it's, his first marriage or Randy Rhoads, but you can feel his pain. And the video goes through the streets of Birmingham, shows his home. It's actually clips from the actual documentary, and you see each album as it unfolds. Elton John also sings a verse on this, and he sings it beautifully. But you feel with this track that whatever's going on, this could be the last thing that Ozzy does. And it's also very apparent from the film that with all the clever editing there is, that he's struggling, and his health is catching up with him. And I do think that this track, Ordinary Man, is one of the best things he's ever done. To me, it fits in with the extension of Changes or She's Gone, but it is a beautiful, beautiful song. And as I say, watch it. If you've never heard it, obviously give us, stream it on Spotify, buy the CD or their vinyl album. But watch the video on YouTube, and it's very, very moving. And it is, I think, again, a highlight of his life. So that's my top 10 Ozzy Osbourne tracks. And be interesting to see what you think. I know we'll all have different ideas, so it's only the ones that I play the most. So it'd be interesting to see. But thank you for watching, and thank you very much for all my patrons and subscribers, especially Jeff and Chris. And I'll see you very soon on the next video. Thank you.